Do you have something you need to say to the people? You have been very demanding of their attention. Nothing? Oh, now you're shy. I thought I would show you guys, since I was about to change out my Dexcom, I thought, why don't I film it? I would share with you what that looks like or what that process is so you could see for yourself. The Dexcom G6 is what I'm using. It actually kind of looks like craft supplies once you pull it out. I haven't opened it yet. This is actually the sensor portion, and each sensor comes with a code here. You input this code into the remote in order to set it up. You put that code into the remote, then it pairs it with this sensor, and also I have my transmitter. Let's get to it. I have worn it on the back of my arm, I've worn it on my lower back, on my sides of my stomach, and mostly I prefer my thighs because it's less intrusive and it doesn't hurt as badly. I wore pants I could pull up easily. Okay, so you pull the portion off here. I put it, let's see, where do I want to put it? Doesn't really matter, just there is fine. Just pick a place. Okay, I don't have to press it down. I don't know why I do that so intensely. But okay, so I like to pinch mine up a little bit. Some people don't, some people do. I don't know if maybe it just makes me feel better. Oh, forgot. To pull this off, I'm always so paranoid I'm gonna accidentally push it. Pull this little piece off, just kind of stays there, and then insert. Sometimes it bleeds a little bit. This one's bleeding just a tad, but not too much. And then it looks like that. Before you put the transmitter in, it's just kind of a hole, and there's some jelly stuff in there. Then I take my transmitter and I'm going to input it, but let me grab my remote. I forgot that. Stay. Hold on, I'll be right back. You waited for me. Thank you. Here's the remote. I have the remote, and I also have a app on my phone, and I usually use the app, but lately it's been draining my battery pretty good, so I'm going to use that now. Ooh, it's bleeding quite a bit actually. It says new sensor, and I'm going to put this code in, and then it says that it was good. Attach transmitter, that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, start sensor, and it says sensor is starting, and it takes 2 hours. Let me pull my pants leg down here, and that's about it. I am able to monitor my glucose readings 24/7, basically everything I need to know, and even in the middle of the night, it's quite helpful. If my sugar goes low, then this thing goes berserk and alarms, to the point of why I have this. We have discussed in previous videos about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. One of the comorbid conditions that I have with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is adrenal insufficiency, which is actually due to, mine is not primary, so it's not technically called Addison's, it's adrenal insufficiency, but mine is secondary. I thought I'd just let you guys see how she's being right now. Pretty ridiculous. That said, it's caused me to have reactive hypoglycemia, and that causes my sugar to go super low, sometimes in the 40s or 30s. Yeah, so that's the Dexcom G6. I want to talk about self-care and having a chronic condition, or self-care and Ehlers-Danlos for my reference. A lot of times it can be confused that self-care and doing things we enjoy are the same thing, and they're not. I want to shed a little bit of light on the benefit of doing effective, healthy self-care. I'm going to address maybe 5 self-care things that you can do to help improve your quality of life or your experience, and maybe build from there. And you can tailor these, of course, to your needs and what your reality looks like, depending on your limitations and your ability. I was unaware that having a chronic illness and experiencing the world through a body that has limitations yet is able-bodied in ways impacted my self-love. And I say self-love, and I don't mean love of self, I mean valuing who I am as a person. So I don't want that to sound like narcissistic or selfish, but more like when you are on a crashing airplane, you put on your own oxygen mask before you put on someone else's. Why? Because you can save 5 people with the mask on and 1 person without it. So having a bit of self-love, loving yourself enough to do the thing that you need to do, helps you love others well. Okay, so back to self-care. I want to look at this as a means of improving our quality of life, as well as enjoying being who we are. And I think sometimes that has been taboo or not okay. Number 1 would be giving thanks daily, or having time that we process the things that we're grateful for regarding what our bodies can do. I have said before that there's ability in disability, and I think that this requires intentional attention. If we look at all of the things that we can't do, the list can grow and grow and grow. There are plenty of things that we cannot do. But if I look at the positive list, then things can be brighter and I can maintain my joy much easier. Some things I like to think about are the activities I'm still able to do, or maybe activities that I didn't know about prior to the decline or the flares that come with Ehlers. Maintaining mobility within my home. I don't use a wheelchair in my home. I do have a stool that I drag around. I drag it to the oven. It lives in my bathroom because it sits in front of the counter, and I sit on it to do my hair, my makeup, or whatever I'm doing at the counter. But that helps me do things all by myself. I don't need help. I don't have someone come in and do things for me, and I'm really grateful for that, because some people need that, and I may someday need that, but as for right now, I don't need it, and I'm so grateful. Perform a favorite hobby is another one, and there are some hobbies that I have previously had that I can no longer do. It is still a bit hard to deal with the loss of that, but I do it a little at a time and more all the time. So I found other hobbies. I love writing, doing more projects that I enjoy, love to read. One thing I've recently learned that I like to do is actually writing. I've always liked to write cards and mail them, but for Christmas I got a wax stamp set and I love it. It's so fun. So it's just a fun time to get to write cards out and mail them out, and people receive them and find the novelty of it. It brings me a lot of joy. Just really being grateful for what my hobbies offer me and what I am able to do with that is really nice. I try to focus on those things, and also on the best days when I'm able to go out and go to a musical, or go out to some type of production or a festival or something fun out in the community. Those days are wonderful, and they carry me through the harder days, which can be challenging when you have to cancel social engagements or whatnot. So it's really a helpful thing to do. Number 2, an activity that can help every day is being intentional on naming 3 ways. You can pick 5 if you want, but naming 3 ways that you plan to express your self-love. And by self-love, again, I'm meaning self-care, the identifying of our intrinsic value and the way we're going to nurture that. I actually keep a journal, and I like to journal every day, and sometimes more than once, and be able to maintain some sort of ability to track how things have gone and and what I'm able to do, which is really good for me. I can always look back and see how far I've come in certain areas that maybe I'm struggling in, and that's always a positive. Sometimes simply caring for ourselves outside of just the mechanics of it is being open to and available to asking for help and accepting the help that we're offered. And I think in our community, we can often find that there's a negative focus on people not being helpful, but people may be helping us regularly in small ways. And maybe it's simply a phone call or a text message that it becomes encouraging because they thought of us. Or maybe it's in larger ways, like picking up our groceries. And if someone offers and you find that to be valuable, then highlight that in your day and be mindful of how giving and how generous, but also how important you must be that they were willing to take their time out and do that. Allowing periods of rest in your day and being aware that we can't just blow through the whole day. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I tend to try to block out my schedule in pretty wild amounts of time, and it's not feasible. And then I can often feel like a failure because I didn't reach my goals. And so I try to monitor that and not do that because it's not helpful. It's discouraging. And so if I can be reasonable with my time and schedule, and then schedule in rest and things that really are good for me, and enjoyable even, so that itself can be rejuvenating throughout the day, so that I'm not just wiped out and exhausted by 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock and I can't enjoy the rest of the hours of the day. Another thing would be on this list would be avoiding triggering foods. For me, oftentimes that's hard to identify, and some of you may relate to this. I might eat pizza today and it's fine, but tomorrow it makes me sick. And sometimes that has to do with histamine levels being built up with mast cell, and sometimes that has to do with my body's being contrary today. So I have noticed that butter is something that it may not bother me today, but if it's going to bother me, it's going to have butter in it. A lot of times garlic, tomatoes, and onions, those things really get me. For some reason, over the last year to year and a half, strong smells have been really challenging for me. I try to modify things to be able to enjoy the foods that I like. Another thing I have done to contribute to my self-care is having my groceries delivered through Instacart. Not sponsored, but if you can't use Instacart, a lot of markets have curbside, or they have order and pickup. And also you have loved ones who might pick up your groceries if you order them. That's, for me, has been a big positive because I enjoy shopping for groceries, but standing in the line after shopping for groceries becomes very challenging for me. And after a grocery run, or after time spent in the market, I have to really lay down and rest. So having those delivered is not as gratifying, but it does save me a lot of energy and actually reduces pain levels. Another thing that I have done is I have been really working on, over the last year, learning how to not sweat the small stuff. And I've heard that my whole life, don't sweat the small stuff, and everything is small stuff. To me, for so long, there were no small things, and everything was so hard and challenging because I would stress over it. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted everything to be right. I wanted everything to be number one, the best, whatever that I was doing and how I was performing. I wanted it to be the greatest, and it can't be. So I have been practicing being so intentional, and again, recovering perfectionist, so I fail regularly, but I do work hard at identifying things that don't really matter in the long run, and I need to save what stress energy I'm going to use on things that do matter, so that I'm not sweating the small stuff, basically. I also like to, number 4, create a self-love plan for the day that won't aggravate your chronic illness. This is something maybe you can do like a template for, or have an idea of a couple of different self-care plans, so that maybe it's not appropriate for today. Maybe you have one for flare days. Maybe you have one for your good days. But this might include having a playlist already developed that you could play that's encouraging or happy music. A lot of times people like to match their music with their mood, and that's even less helpful. So having those playlists that you don't have to try to figure out what songs, maybe having some activities already available to you on a self-care plan. So if you had maybe a notebook or something, you could put some plans in, or even a, what do we call them? Calm down box, and you could name it anything, so it wouldn't have to be for calming down, but it could be for self-care or for a pick-me-up type box that you maybe get one of those plastic Rubbermaid shoe boxes and put things in it that make you happy, manipulatives, things that you enjoy, a candle, Play-Doh, whatever it is that you enjoy, a pack of peanut M&Ms for me, dark chocolate Reese's, or something like that that you're going to enjoy, and it'll give you just a little bit of boost in your day. So you can open up that box and really enjoy what you have prepared for your future self when you really need it, and it's harder to think when you're wrung out or having a flare especially. And last but not least, number 5, take time to see the beauty in who you are. Now this sounds a little puppies and rainbows, but really there are things about every one of us that we can find that is beautiful. I think we focus so much on the negatives and how we don't add up and compare to others, and really the only person we can compare ourselves to is ourselves. So you can compare your current self to your past or your future self, but looking back really isn't helpful either. Being able to see who you are and where you want to be is more helpful, but also finding things about yourself that you do find beautiful. So our intrinsic value carries more weight, and it will carry us further than anything on the outside, anything that wrinkles or turns gray or sags or whatever you want to say about it. But really, I mean, to me, gray hair is just as beautiful as colored hair, and wrinkles, maybe you have laugh lines, maybe you have crow's feet, all of those things are from smiling. So wrinkles can tell a story too of where you've been and who you are. So I think all of that is quite beautiful. And if we change our focus to identify things with a different perspective and with a different view, it will go a long way in helping us to have a more positive attitude, and which then in return can help us reduce pain and anxiety and depression and increase our quality of life. I hope some of these ideas have been helpful, and I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. You are so silly.